Are liberals just performative? Is the No Kings protest a waste of time and energy? Is Sabrina Carpenter donating to the Trans Law Center bad, actually? Hi, I'm Liz, and these are some questions that I've seen on the timeline over the last couple of days, especially since the No Kings protests brought millions of people to the streets to protest Donald Trump and the threat to democracy that is the Republican leadership in our nation. Did I say my name? I think I did. My name's Liz. I talk about whatever's on my mind, and that's what's on my mind lately, so let's dive into it.
Protests in America are practically useless. Literally, protests in America have been diluted down to being a poster contest. It's like everyone's rushing to make the most social media viral poster. Protests are nothing without a goal. What is going to come out of this? Yay! We have no kings. We are in a democratic country. Now what? And that's enough activism for a lot of y'all.
This is a common complaint I see about the No Kings protests is that they have no goal and that they're just people in the streets stating that the Trump administration has overreached its authority and that there's no push for people to actually change policy. My question is, did we have the same complaint about the largest protests in history at the time, which was the Women's March in 2017 after Donald Trump was inaugurated? That Women's March stands out. People still talk about it and how it shifted the conversation and how it came hand in hand with the rise of the Me Too movement, and the Women's March led to more women running for office. We had the largest number of women run for office in the 2018 midterms than we had since Bill Clinton in the 90s.
Pennsylvania's all-male congressional delegation will change when voters go to the polls in November.
In all, more than 500 women announced runs for Congress and governorships in 2018.
But I got excited when I looked at my ballot because I did my homework. Yeah. I looked at my ballot and I saw all of these amazing women who are qualified. I did a little shimmy when I would vote for them. And then also you saw a lot of firsts, as we talked about right now. I saw that an 80-year-old a woman had actually voted for the first time ever.
While the Women's March had no specific goal other than to say, hey, this man is sexist and a threat to women's reproductive rights and our freedoms, because hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets to say, hey, we don't want to see women's rights set back, at the same time that there was a push to name abusers and perpetrators of abuse in Hollywood, and the Me Too movement.
Estimated 33 million American women have been sexually harassed, and an estimated 14 million have experienced sexual abuse in work-related incidents. That Me Too movement and reaction to the Harvey Weinstein scandal exploding overnight. The latest headline coming from Reese Witherspoon. This morning, Reese Witherspoon, in an explosive speech, speaking out about sexual abuse she suffered at just 16 years old by a Hollywood director. Witherspoon's speech coming after dozens of women have come forward, accusing Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein of sexual assault and harassment. And the Me Too movement, millions of women across the country and around the world sharing their experience with sexual harassment and abuse online, using the hashtag Me Too.
All of that media attention led to hundreds of women deciding to do something, put their name on a list, and run for office in 2018. But just because a movement doesn't have one goal in mind, as this person says, doesn't mean that it can't actually create a domino impact that will lead to legislation and changes down the line.
The No Kings protest. I'm going to start with that this is not a criticism of people who went to the No Kings protest. This is a criticism of the substance of it. This question is mainly for liberals and neoliberals who went. What is the point? It's a genuine question. What is the substance of the protest? What are we doing, right? Because if we're just standing around marching in circles, well, that's just a state-sanctioned march.
I'm just curious. If you're just standing around telling us on the internet that us standing around at a protest isn't doing anything, then what is the point? What is the point for you to get on the internet and make a video stating that the people who actually are showing up in their community are not doing anything and that they don't have a point?
Because you're organizing with cops. Also, why am I RSVPing to a protest? But that's another thing, I digress.
Why am I RSVPing to a protest? I don't understand the criticism of the No Kings movement and the RSVPing when every political movement asks for an RSVP. That was literally a way that we pranked Donald Trump was hundreds of people RSVP to a rally of his in Oklahoma and like barely anyone showed up. Every politician, every political movement asks for an RSVP. When they organized the Montgomery bus boycott, they had lists of names of who was going to take people to work, who was going to show up at the church and like create meals for people and make sure that people were fed and had their jobs. Every organized boycott and protest in history needs to know who's going to show up and actually be there. Otherwise, you end up like Donald Trump in Oklahoma with an empty stadium because we pranked you. What kind of revolution does that have a plan? Like, if you're genuinely afraid that the government will hack into the RSVP system and will use your RSVP to target you for political persecution, you would not be on TikTok. Because TikTok will also turn over your data to the US government, and more likely to turn over your data than the No Kings protest people would willingly ever do that. You just want to find a reason to criticize organizers who are actually doing something while you're out here making TikToks.
But I can't think of any fascist system that was taken down by people marching around for a couple hours. If it's about raising awareness, I kind of get that, but at the same time, there's very few people who still agree with what ICE is doing.
This makes me so frustrated, the idea that, marching for a couple hours doesn't change things. It has changed things in history, and it continues to change things. There were women in Berlin who were married to Jewish husbands, and they took to the streets and marched in protest because their husbands were going to get rounded up and arrested, and the authorities at the time did not like the image of white German women saying, hey, our husbands are being persecuted because they're Jewish and arrested, and showing up in public and making a big to-do about it by showing up in the streets and marching for their husbands, that they ended up letting these women's husbands go. So the idea that people showing up with signs and embarrassing the government doesn't work is fundamentally flawed because it has worked throughout history. If you don't understand history, just say that instead of telling us that marching doesn't work.
There's very few people who still agree that Trump isn't a fascist. There's very few people who are going to be on the other side of the No Kings protest or the issues that No Kings was fighting for. And even with the counter protests that were there and the people who were on the other side of the issue, they're not really worth our time. And we can kind of...
When he says there's very few people who disagree with the No Kings protest, there's very few people who don't like ICE, those people are still in power, bro. Like, those people are in Congress. Those people are giving the budget to Kristi Noem to go out and empower ICE in Chicago and Portland and other cities to act as a paramilitary force in American cities. And by showing up, especially in Republican red areas, like where I live and throughout the South, letting our congressional people know and our leadership know that we do not find this acceptable is a big deal. It's like telling people in 2010, the Tea Party movement, oh, well, we all know that you don't like the Affordable Care Act, so there's no point in showing up and trying to protest it. You think fellow Republicans told that to the Tea Party movement? Yeah, they did, actually. Did it work? The Tea Party movement still showed up, and guess what? They later took over the Republican Party. If you don't think that the people on the streets today are not the future leaders of the political movement in this nation, then you don't understand how political movements work. People showing up with signs later show up to organize and to vote and to register new voters and to spread the word about political activism in ways that you can get involved in your community. Just like the Tea Party movement did in 2010 and later then using that energy took over the Republican Party. And by showing up and protesting, they made it uncomfortable for Republicans to work for the Obama administration and to pass good bipartisan legislation. And those Republicans knew when they went and voted that the Tea Party movement would later vote them out of office if they didn't do what they said when they were holding their signs up on whatever Tax Tuesdays they decided it was time to go protest. I was a kid, I was at those protests. And I remember we literally changed our congressional rep from like a moderate Republican to a radical Republican due to those Tea Party movement protests.
I'm also not going to criticize leftists who also criticize people that went to the No Kings protest because I think they had valid arguments to make. But I did see a lot of people that went to the protest to get organized, to find like-minded people, to get radicalized, that were looking for that. And that's very good. If the goal of your protest or the goal of going to a protest is to meet like-minded people to get organized with, then please, by all means, do that. What this is more directed at is people who believe that these type of protests are going to do something. Protests in quotations, because like I said, this is nothing more than a state-sanctioned rally. What does things to better the material conditions of Black, Brown, Indigenous people especially, but all peoples, is organizing, creating dual power, adjacent infrastructure, organizing as a community, as a structure. I don't really know how to end this video. I think that while on the one hand, I am critical of the No Kings protest just because of the people that organized it and the fact that I had to RSVP for a protest. Again, that was just so silly. But I think ultimately my criticism is that there's not much meat to this.
I didn't want to RSVP. It was so silly. You should go to a protest organized. How can you say it's silly to RSVP to a protest, and also protests should be used to organize and meet other members of your community and rally around Black and Indigenous people? If you don't RSVP and provide your email address so that they can later contact you about ways to show up at city council and public events and make sure that you are registered to vote, then yeah, the protest was kind of like, how are we going to communicate in the future? That's what the RSVP is for, is to make sure that we are all on the same page, not only that we know who's arriving, but that we can send a follow-up email after and connect on social media platforms where we're going to post more information about how to get organized in your community. If you're constantly negging on the people doing the boots on the ground work to grow a movement, you're actually on the side of the oppressors. I'm just going to say it. Like, if nothing's going to make you happy and no form of protest is going to make you happy because you think all of it is state sanctioned, then just give up. Just give up. And the best thing to do is to not even make TikToks about how you've given up and how we're all wrong. Delete your account, please, and go away. Like, if you're not going to be in the arena fighting the good fight, then, like, leave us alone while we're fighting it. Like, either join or stop criticizing it. You can criticize it once you've joined it, once you've showed up and passed out water at a protest and helped, an elderly person who needed help who got overheated because it's freaking June in Florida when we planned this. This is a criticism I'm also saying, oh, you're working with the police. Number one, the police were very antagonistic at this No Kings rally on this one I was at. They had speakers at the perimeter of the rally on a loop constantly telling us that they were going to arrest anyone who they deemed to act inappropriately. They did not have that at the first one, and I thought it was very antagonistic and different from the previous rally. And I thought it was, I believe that is because of personally, I think that comes because the police are empowered by the attitude of the president and this administration towards free speech. And I think that was directly because of this administration's rhetoric that the police here were so antagonistic towards the protest. Number two, we marched from a icon of the city, a landmark, to the city courthouse. We had to cross a bridge. The plan originally apparently was to cross on the sidewalk, but there were too many people. It would have been a choke point and could have been dangerous. So the police actually shut down the road. If we didn't work with the police and say, hey, can you close this road down? People would have gotten run over by cars. Like, this is a busy bridge. The police stopped traffic and we were all able to safely walk from this landmark to the courthouse. There was one road that we had to walk on the sidewalk. The traffic was not stopped on, but the main bridge was blocked off for us by the police. So if you think that makes it state sanctioned, okay, that makes it state sanctioned, but that also makes it safer for people to show up and use their voice and their First Amendment rights to organize.
I hate to be the negative Nancy, but the No Kings protest lasted a single day, a couple hours. And while it did draw attention, the impact stopped there. A one-day demonstration might raise awareness, but awareness without sustained pressure does not create real change. Movements that actually shift power or policy require consistency. They require follow-through and collective organization. If you look historically, protests that have actually led to reform did not end when the cameras turned off. They involved long-term strategies, petitions, boycotts, ongoing demonstrations, community education, and even political engagement. Without that infrastructure, a one-day protest is just symbolic. It's not transformative. I'm sorry. So yeah, it sparked conversation and it got news coverage, but the lack of continued action means nothing fundamentally has shifted. The systems that people were protesting against are still intact because they aren't being forced to confront lasting resistance. visibility is a great first step. Love that for y'all. But persistence is what actually builds change. It's just like all a performative. It's a performance at this point. Like, y'all show up for a photo, you post a hashtag, you yell for a few hours, and then you disappear like you did your part. And it's exhausting watching people treat activism like an aesthetic instead of a commitment. Real change doesn't happen because you went viral for 24 hours. It happens when you keep pushing after everyone else moves on. We've turned like awareness into a finish line instead of a starting point. And it's so easy to show up once. It's very hard to stay consistent when it stops being trendy or convenient. And that's the difference between movement and moment. One keeps going and the other one fades as soon as the applause and the cameras and the convenience does.
I feel like some of these commentators are divorced from reality of like what's been happening. Like the first No Kings protest was in June, and the October one is a follow-up. Like none of these protests are isolated or alone. A lot of these protests are connected to bigger protests in cities like Chicago, Portland, and LA. The LA No Kings protest was directly tied to ICE involvement in that city and the LA takeover of LA by the National Guard, and it was specifically a call to stand against the federal takeover of U.S. cities and the use of National Guard and federal force on protesters in LA. Like that's what the first No Kings protest was specifically a response to. The second one is now a specific response to the continued takeover by Donald Trump and the use of the National Guard in Chicago and threats to use it in Portland. And I don't think these are isolated or solo instances, and we can see that these protests have been tied directly to community action, especially in cities that are most impacted by the militarization of ICE and the National Guard. We also see the movement use boycotts very effectively. Now, is it directly tied to No Kings? Maybe not, but it is tied to an awareness and an on-guardness against Donald Trump and his authority and how he is using his authority to crush our First Amendment rights. You look at how Disney was bullied to try to take down Jimmy Kimmel's show, and there was a national call to boycott Disney, and after so many people canceled their Disney Plus subscriptions, Disney quickly backtracked and stood up to the president, thankfully. And I think that is because people are very aware that at any moment they could be called on to take action, like boycotts and stand and going to a protest. Like people are showing up where they can and where they see an opening to show up. And the No Kings protest is not just raising awareness, it is raising action in a way, because now it's tied people directly to their community. People are more in tune to calls to action than they were a year ago when Kamala Harris was frankly struggling to get volunteers. And also this idea that this is for a viral moment and it's trending. I'm sorry, what world is being standing up to Donald Trump trending? Most of the media, most of social media is very pro-Trump. Like this, most of the social media platforms are suppressing liberal voices and amplifying conservative talking points about women's rights and America first, and just like all of the like manosphere mixed with the Trumplication of life. Did I just make that word up, Trumplication? It is not trending to be anti-Trump. In fact, brands are not working with people who are too political. So the idea that people can just post a sign and move on and continue with their life is not really true, because there is a push to canceling people who are anti-Trump right now. And it is actually, I think you're stuck in like 2018 when being woke was cool. Being woke now, it's kind of a sign to get bullied on the internet, not get trending or viral. When people ask, were these protests successful or not? Did they accomplish anything? I think you just have to look at this administration's response to them to know that at the very least, they get under Donald Trump's skin, and that he is posting memes where he is showing himself attacking the protesters in crass humor. And he's also posting pictures of J.D. Vance and himself crowned as kings. The protests are effective in that they show the true character of Donald Trump and the true way in which he is dominating the presidency in an ahistoric, unconstitutional manner that needs to be constantly, continually resisted. And it's another reason to call your congressman and say, hey, he's threatening our free speech. Hey, he doesn't care about our First Amendment rights. He is a wannabe dictator. And every time he reacts this way to peaceful people exercising their First Amendment right, gives us the opportunity to go in and say, this is who he truly is, and showcase his character. At the same time as the No Kings protest, I think this is just an addendum to this conversation about whether liberals are too performative. Sabrina Carpenter, one of my favorite singers, her album is my favorite album probably this year and last year. Sabrina Carpenter went on SNL. Around the time she went on SNL, it was announced that for the second leg of her short and sweet tour, that she would be donating funds to the Transgender Law Center. This is on top of donations that she already makes on every...
Is it performative? I too had the inkling to wonder this, and I'm inclined to think no. I would be really surprised if she's someone who does not support drag and support trans rights. And even if it was performative, I'm kind of like, is it better to do things and be performative than to not do them at all? It's like a genuine question. But I will say it is a weird dichotomy, this like, oh, leaning into conservative sounds, leaning into trad wife aesthetics, then also pandering to the gays by working with Coleman Domingo, working with drag queens, doing Protect the Doll signs. So I'm like, I don't like that you're doing both of these things. I think you have to pick one. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
And what I find fascinating, around a month later, she is now announcing this donation drive that she will be donating profits from her concerts to the Transgender Law Center. And she's announced this after people accused her of being performative for highlighting trans people and drag queens at her performance. I think the opposite of performative is both highlighting them, showcasing them at a time that is very anti-trans rights and can lead to, conservatives salivating at the mouth to like lambast an artist for having drag queens on stage, and also using the money from your tour to directly benefit trans people. Like, I do not think that's performative at all. And yet we see leftists on the timeline saying this isn't enough, like she's not doing enough, she's just a white woman who's using our community and doesn't care about us and is just using us for clicks and views. There will be nothing that an artist like Sabrina Carpenter can do to satisfy these kind of people. Like, if someone donating their money and highlighting the work of the Transgender Law Center, because frankly, I don't know that many people even know that organization existed until they announced that she was donating this money from her tour to them. If that doesn't satisfy you, like, what else can Sabrina Carpenter do? Like, what else could she do? She's already come out and spoken on the election at a tour, like condemning Donald Trump. She's highlighted LGBTQ people on stage with her. She has donated money and supported the cause through her own profits. What else can a white woman do to show that she's not performative? Even if it were performative, it's still doing good. It's still doing good in the world. Like, that money is going to be used for good. So who cares what is performative anyway? Like, why does it matter if you're doing it because you want to look like an ally? Because sometimes looking like an ally is just being an ally, and that's being an ally. You're gonna look like an ally when you are an ally. I feel like this conversation is rather circular. And honestly, with friends like this, friends, who needs enemies? Like, come on, y'all. We are at one of the darkest times, truly, in American history. We are at a time when people are being rounded up by masked government agents, separated from their families, interned for long periods of time without trial, arrested under false pretenses, the armed guard sent to American cities, LGBTQ rights stripped back, the government threatening to ban medication that directly impacts women's health care. The government is trying to fire workers who help disabled children in classrooms across the United States. Do you really want to spend your energy arguing that Sabrina Carpenter donating money to the Transgender Law Center is performative and she's not doing enough to help out? Who needs enemies? And you know what? We have plenty of enemies. We have plenty of enemies. I'm going to quote one of my favorite books. Y'all, remember who the real enemy is. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not Sabrina Carpenter, and it's not the folks who showed up at the No Kings protest. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I hope y'all enjoyed. I was actually really frustrated by these videos, so maybe they're too frustrating for you to have enjoyed the video, but I think my commentary was a lot of fun. It was all off the cuff, and I'm going to try to put as many sources as I can. I know I cited a few things, and so I'm going to try to put sources in the description, and let's move on from the protest. I say that because I've now made 2 videos in a row that are related to the protest, so I would love to talk about something else later this week. So I have some ideas brewing. I have this very fun idea. I'm so excited about it. So a little preview here. I have this idea to do a video on the history of government shutdowns, because you know, Monica Lewinsky scandal started with a government shutdown. Clemson got fed McDonald's at the White House during a government shutdown. There are so many interesting things that happen in American history during a government shutdown, and they are also incredibly modern. Like the very first one, I believe, ever was during the Bill Clinton administration. What a domino effect. It gives me another excuse to talk about Monica Lewinsky, one of my favorite people to talk about from the 20th century. Anyway, that is my thought for my next video. Will I get enough research done to post it this week? It might be a week after, but stay tuned for that video. It's coming. It's coming. I promise. Once I get spinning in my brain, you know, an ADHD deep dive cannot be stopped by any force of nature. Anyway, thanks for watching, y'all. Be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with a friend if you enjoyed. Until next time, see ya.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.